Hey there. Coding can be a daunting task sometimes, especially if you're just starting off. First you learn about some code, and then you start worrying about code syntax, and then you have to worry about building your code, and then you have to worry about running your code. But thankfully, we have something called IDEs, or in other words, Integrated Development Environments. With an IDE, you can write your code, you can build your code, you can run your code, and you can do a lot of things. You can even debug your code. And so IDEs quickly become one of your best friends as a developer. Visual Studio is a classic IDE, and I've used it at both of my jobs for different kinds of applications. And I've also used it to help beginner programmers learn how to code. I would say it's probably my favorite IDE. And in this video, I'll be going over how to create your Visual Studio project, how to run your code, and then some key features that I use every day at my current job. So let's get started. Alright, my name's Henrik, and I'm here to teach you how to program your own applications, stress less, build more, save time, and improve lives. But before we begin, I would like to share that I do have a free guide called my Personalized Finance App Programming Guide. And in this guide, I teach you how to program an application where you take your credit card transactions and then you categorize them into different budget categories so you know how much you're spending. It's a really easy guide and a really fun project to do if you're learning how to code. The link is in the description. You can download it there. And if you download it and pay attention to what it says, you'll definitely learn some fundamental programming concepts. Alright, this tutorial is going to be in Visual Studio 2022 for Mac, but the things that I'll be teaching here will be very generic, so you can apply them in any version of Visual Studio that you have. So first we go to New, then you're brought to this menu and you just select Console Application, and then you'll have these options. Just choose the defaults and then you select Do Not Use Top Level Statements, and then you hit Continue. And then you can type in your project name. So let's just name it Visual Studio Tutorial. And then you can select the location of where your project is saved. So create. Alright, now that you've created your project, on the sidebar you'll have your files for your project. And then you'll have the files opened up in this part of the window. And then you'll have some tools for your coding. And then up here you can choose to run your code. So let's try running it. Okay, so it says hello world. So there are three panels at the bottom. There's the errors. This shows up when you have errors in your code. This is just showing you how it's building. See, it says build succeeded, 0 warnings, 0 errors. Then terminal will show you the output of your program. And then when you start to edit your program, say I want to do my name is Henrik. When you're editing it, you'll have a dot appear up here. There'll be some indication that that this file hasn't been saved yet. So you just save it. You can go to File, and then you can do Save. Or you can just use the shortcut here. Usually it's Command S or Control S. And then the dot disappears. And then you run your code. And then there you go. So now I just printed my updated code. Alright, I'm going to go over quickly some of the files that your project creates. When you create a project, these are the files that are automatically created. You're going to have a .vs folder, which is for Visual Studio, so you don't really have to worry about this. And it's not going to appear if you don't have hidden files shown in your Finder or in your Explorer, your File Explorer. And then there's these two files. This is the solution file. So whenever you say you don't have Visual Studio open, if you want to open up your project, you just click the solution folder. So this is what you click to open your program. See? And then the files that appear in the sidebar or side panel, they're in here. See? There's the program.cs file. And that's what this is. And this is where your main code lives. Your main code is going to live in here. And this is in C#. That's why it's a .cs file. And then you'll have a csproj file. And this one is just some parameters for your program. And you don't have to worry about this if you're just starting off. It's just some parameters for your program in particular. So that's the file structure that's created. And then here in bin, this is where your executables are created. I think if you run this one, you'll see this thing printed out. So here in the bin folder, can look at what the contents are. You go into debug, and then go into net 7.0, and I think this is the executable that's generated. So let's run this one. Alright, so there you go. This is the executable that's generated. So if you want to run your code without using Visual Studio, you can just use that executable. One of the nice things about having an IDE is that it'll tell you if there's an error. So pretend you forgot, you want to put another print here, and then you forgot to put the semicolon at the end. So it'll show this red line here in your IDE telling you that there's an error. If you hover your mouse over it, it'll tell you what the error is before you even run. So you don't even see the error here, but if you run this, there's the error, and it'll tell you the line number where the error occurred. And then it's the same thing that's mentioned here. So it's just telling you need to have a semicolon. And a lot of times, even though you're experienced at programming, you will forget to put that there. And then see how the red line disappeared? If you run it again, it's just going to save it for you and then build it. So that's why I was able to build without any errors. So if you were to build with the error, your build output will indicate that there's an error there as well. But I usually don't really look at the build output that much. I usually just look at the errors here and then fix it, and then run it, and there you go. Alright, now if you want to add a file to your program, say you want to add a class, then you just do this, you do new file. Let's just say it's a person class, and then say we have the first name and then last name. But there's some lines here and it's telling you that there's a suggestion, and here are some of the suggestions that it'll give you. It'll say that this name is not used. It'll say make the field read only. Okay, now we created our class. We have a first name and a last name, and then we have the setter functions and getter functions. And then let's just create a person. The nice thing about IDEs is that it'll autocomplete for you. See how I was typing, and then it showed up, and you just press enter. And then we created it. Now here it tells you all the methods you can use under this class. So we can do set first name, and then let's do John. Let's make his name John Doe. John Doe. And then we'll write down person. And then let's do get first name first. Okay, let's run this. Oh, John Doe. So I said John Doe, but we need to put a space in between. There you go. So that's how you create a new file in your program, and it's going to show up here in your file system right here. All right, I'm going to show you some other things that I do at my job. A lot of times I don't know what this function does. Pretend I don't know what this function does. I like to right click it, and then I go to the definition. So you go to definition, and it'll bring you right where it's being defined. And I think that's really convenient. And then you have first name here, and then you just go to definition, and there you go. And then if you want to know how many times this field is being used, you can right click and you do view all references, and then it'll show you all the times it was referenced in your program. It shows you in person class it was used here, and then it was used here, and then it'll even bring you to the line, and then here. Yeah, so usually I'm in program.cs or some other function, and then I don't know what does this do. It's being called, but I don't know what it does with this piece of data. Just right click it, go to the definition, and then you're like, oh, okay, so it's setting this value, and then go to definition. What is this? Oh, it's a field of the class. So that's where IDEs really shine. And last thing I'll do is I'll show you how to do debugging. So let's say we have a for loop. Okay, say we have a for loop here, and then it's going to print the index every iteration. So let's run this. Okay, so it prints all of the lines, But what I'm going to show you is how to use the debugger. So by default, this is already has a debugger in it. But before we do that, let's put a breakpoint. You can go to debug, and you can toggle a breakpoint. Or you can use F9 to do it. So it's really easy. So you put a breakpoint here, and then you run it, and then it will stop. Your code will stop there. And then you can use F10 to go to the next line. And you can do F10 again to do the next line. And so on and so forth. It becomes really useful when you're debugging your code. And I think this is where Visual Studio really comes in handy. So I see it is printing, and then you come in here. You can see how the for loop is how it's going through the for loop. It goes to it checks the condition, and then it goes in here, and then it goes in the console right line, and then it prints the first one, and it goes to the bottom of the for loop, and then it increments the I variable, and then it'll check the condition again, and then it continues into the for loop, and then it's about to print the next one, and then it prints 1. So you can see how having the debugger is really useful. It helps you go line by line where exactly, if you have an issue, it helps you go line by line and figure out where exactly this issue is happening. And I've used this countless times at my job. And then you can use F5 if you're done, or if you want it to continue running indefinitely, you can just do F5 and it'll just finish. Or what you can do is you can put 2 breakpoints, and then you start off at the top one here, and then you run, and then you press F5, you go to the next one. See? And then maybe you want to go here, you put another breakpoint here, you want it to continue running until that breakpoint, you press F5, and it'll go there. And then you can continue pressing F5, and it'll keep on printing the lines for you. Or it'll keep on printing each iteration for you. I think a lot of times people can get intimidated by the amount of windows that there are in Visual Studio. You can actually close a lot of these. You don't really need to have them. You can just close it with this, or you can auto hide them. And then you can just, if you want to look at them, you just look at them there. And then you can pin it to bring it back in. But these are all just individual tools for you. But you don't need to use all of them. And sometimes a lot of them will just pop up when you're doing certain things around the IDE. And if ever you accidentally close one of these, you can just bring it back by going to View, and then you can do Terminal, and it'll come back. Some of them will come on the sidebar, and this is for Git. And if you want to know how to connect your project to Git, you can watch my other video about that. I think my error window is gone, so you just go back here and click errors. It'll show up, and then you can pin it to bring it back into this view. Alright, this is my tutorial in Visual Studio. I hope it really helps you out in terms of learning how to code in Visual Studio. And if you have any questions, if there's anything that I'm missing, please let me know in the comments, and I'll try to answer some of your questions. And maybe I'll make a video if there's a lot of questions about a particular topic in Visual Studio. And if you haven't downloaded it yet, I do have that guide called my Personalized Finance App Programming Guide. It's completely free, and it's a good project that you can do with your Visual Studio. Now that you know how to use Visual Studio, you can use my programming guide to build your first application. So you can download that at the link in the description. Alright, thanks for watching this video. Thanks for making it to the end. I really appreciate you, and I hope, as always, that I'm making helpful content for you. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.